Hello there, my RPG lovers, and welcome to another video. Gothic Remake turned out to be an amazing game in general.
I wonder what gave it away.
It still has some bugs and people are complaining about the performance, so I fully expect Alchemia to keep pumping patches that will address those issues. I just recently finished a full playthrough, published my full review, and played the game quite a bit more on top of that actually. As a matter of fact, I'm still running a permadeath playthrough on hard difficulty live on stream, and I'm also playing another playthrough offline as a mage. So yeah, I'm loving the game and I can't stop playing basically. Gothic Remake sold 500,000 copies in its first week of release, and I'm pretty sure that number is much higher now. I wouldn't be surprised if it's close to 1,000,000 copies now, judging by Steam numbers alone. The game managed to maintain a very solid amount of daily players who kept logging in. But these numbers are much more interesting for some other reasons as well that we're going to talk about in this video.
Thanks, man. You just made my day.
So, we're going to talk about the potential Gothic 2 remake, why we could see that game much sooner than you might think, is Gothic Remake the most successful game that THQ Nordic ever published, and some more topics related to this. But first, please support the channel by listening to today's sponsor. Ragnarok Online Classic is an MMORPG which just introduced America's server and the Let's Go Rock World Cup event. Players can now join the Let's Go Rock event for a chance to win 3,000 World Cup viewing fund, football themed rewards, and other prizes. Rock America's server is now open for pre-registration. It includes fair, non-pay-to-win monetization model, diverse class progression, strategic character builds, balanced economy system, and enjoyable dungeon gameplay. It also features a fair PvP with global players. The official launch of the event is July 23rd, so make sure to pre-register to participate in the event by checking out the link in the video description. Support your favorite team and try your luck with event rewards in Ragnarok Online Classic Let's Go Rock events. THQ Nordic has a ton of different IPs under their belt, and obviously Gothic is one of them. I was really sad when Piranha Bytes, the original studio behind Gothic, Risen and Elex, had to shut down because of that huge Embracer deal. The production of Gothic Remake started before that actually, and it was being developed by an unknown studio called Alchemia. Well, it's no longer an unknown studio, it's actually one of the most, if not the most, profitable studio for THQ Nordic.
Let's just say emotions are running high right now.
I did some research and a lot of comparisons between Gothic Remake's Steam numbers and pretty much every other THQ Nordic release in the last 10 years or so. And I couldn't find another game which had a bigger peak or healthier concurrent player base after release. Nothing even comes close to these numbers, except one game that came out in 2021. Wreckfest is considered as one of the most successful THQ Nordic games. It sold over 1,000,000 copies, while the sequel for it failed to even come close to those numbers. Way of the Hunter is another really successful title that THQ Nordic published. That game managed to sell over 1,000,000 copies in about 3 years or so. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, damn, that's a mouthful, sold 2,000,000 copies in its first 6 months. That was a very successful game for this publisher. It's also a great example of total amount of copies sold across all platforms, because on Steam the all-time peak was around 15k. That's very solid, but this game probably sold very good, if not better on consoles overall, judging by this metric. This publisher is well known for pushing their titles on as many platforms as possible. They will try to do this with pretty much all IPs they acquire, and this was their only business strategy in the past for a lot of different IPs. They would buy some obscure IP and revive it with brand new console ports, which is exactly what they did with old Gothic franchise as well. If someone told me that I would get to see the original Gothic on consoles before THQ acquired this IP, I would not believe it for a second. But now, that game is pretty much available on every single mainstream console, even Nintendo Switch. And even Gothic 3 is coming out on Switch too, which is the most mind-boggling thing for me personally. So we're getting to see all Gothic games across all mainstream platforms, which is kind of nuts. What's perhaps even crazier is brand new expansions for 20-year-old games, such as Titan Quest, which ultimately led to a full-blown sequel, Titan Quest 2. Speaking of which, Titan Quest 2 has the potential to reach Gothic Remake numbers when it's fully released. That game is currently in early access, and they are pumping major content updates on regular basis. I love this franchise by the way, and I can't wait for the full release. The early access release for Titan Quest II was really successful, with almost 30k peak players and a steady 24-hour peak of around 2k players. Now, Steam numbers for all of these games we just mentioned are lower compared to Gothic Remake, by a mile. And like I said before, nothing even comes close, except one game. And that game would be none other than Biomutant, if you guys remember that one. An open-world action RPG that came out in 2021, which actually covered quite a bit. I was really excited for it, and I made multiple videos before its release, only to be very disappointed when it came out, like most people who were excited for its release. Even so, this game is considered to be a very successful game for THQ Nordic, selling over 1 million copies in its first few months. Unfortunately, that ultimately went nowhere, and we never got to see a sequel or anything else from this studio. Biomutant had a 55k peak on Steam when it first released, which is really impressive, especially for a 2021 niche title. So THQ Nordic had several games that sold over 1 million copies, which technically makes them more successful than Gothic Remake so far. But I think it's only a matter of time until we get to see an announcement for 1 million copies sold for Gothic Remake as well. How well it's going to do in a year or two is yet to be seen, but it seems like it has a fair chance to become the most successful THQ Nordic game in general. I expect to see more drops when it comes to these numbers soon, probably like with pretty much all games. Even so, if they manage to retain at least 50% of the current daily peak in the next few months, that's going to be very good news for this studio and the publisher. I'm really curious to see some numbers on consoles, but we currently don't have anything related to that. The performance on consoles is not great, so the game was met with some harsh criticism, but they also posted a new patch recently, which included an unlocked frame rates. We're probably going to see a lot more patches for this game on PC and consoles. The reception for Gothic Remake is also very good, with around 88% positive on Steam, which makes it very positive. It's not that far away from being overwhelmingly positive, actually.
Oh, really? That's a shame.
Gothic Remake has 74 critic review score on Metacritic and 8.6 user score, which is identical to the original game. So if we take all of this info into consideration, the remake for Gothic 2 is bound to happen. Come to think of it, it's probably going to be one of the easiest business decisions that THQ Nordic ever had to make, and I bet Alchemia is gladly going to work on another remake. THQ also kind of soft confirmed the second remake as well, in a way. This was one of the top comments in the Gothic Remake Accolades trailer. "Do you read this, THQ? Gothic 2 Remake, go." And they responded, "Yes, we are reading this." I mean, sure, it's a silly little comment, but it shouldn't be ignored, actually. Like I said, it's like a soft confirmation from THQ, basically. They can't announce anything yet, but it's the most harmless method of teasing the second remake. Speaking of announcing things, THQ Digital Showcase is happening in early August, so I wouldn't be surprised if they just drop the announcement for Gothic 2 Remake as early as that. Maybe that's a bit too early, but I'll be keeping my eye on that one and probably stream that event as well. That being said, remaking Gothic 2 is going to be an even bigger challenge, especially if Alchemia and THQ have the same approach for the second remake and if they try to expand it even more with brand new contents. I actually think that wouldn't be necessary for Gothic 2 considering the size of the game. The sequel for Gothic was a much more open-ended game, which did something really interesting with the open world map. Gothic 2 had a brand new map, but it also included the map from the first game, kind of. Gothic's 2 version of the map from the first game was not a 100% carbon copy, but it was something close to that. And you had this big new island on top of that. So it would be very interesting to see how Alchemia and THQ Nordic would approach such design decisions. The second Gothic game was much bigger in general, not just when it comes to the map itself. Whatever the case might be, Gothic 2 Remake would be a much bigger project in general, and quite possibly way more expensive. Gothic 2 also had a huge expansion called Night of the Raven, which substantially expanded the game with another huge region. Not only that, but this expansion affected the base game in a major way, so they would have to make a lot of design decisions between the base Gothic 2 and Night of the Raven experience, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Alchemia will have a lot of these decisions to make on their hands with Gothic 2 Remake, and it certainly won't be easy. However, here are some interesting facts and reasons why Gothic 2 Remake could be done much faster, despite the bigger scale, more expensive development, and just the general size of this potential new remake.
You got balls, I'll give you that.
Gothic 1 Remake took almost 7 years to produce, from that playable teaser to the full release of the game. But Alchemia had to do everything from scratch, and that simply wouldn't be necessary for Gothic 2 Remake. While it's still going to require a ton of work to pull off such a remake, they won't have to start from scratch, which is a huge deal. First of all, I would find it hard to believe that Alchemia would drastically change the artistic style for Gothic 2 Remake. The game would probably look very similar to the first remake. The artistic style in Gothic 2 was noticeably different compared to Gothic 1, but still pretty similar in general. So there is a huge chance that Gothic 2 Remake looks very similar to Gothic 1 Remake with some slight visual improvements, which also means that returning characters would look pretty much the same, and that will save a lot of development time. Gothic 1 Remake had a ton of unique faces for the game, which they outsourced to a different studio. They would still have to make more unique faces for the sequel, of course, but the core cast of Gothic would probably remain the same. But character models are only one type of asset that Alchemia will probably reuse for the sequel. They already have a ton of different assets that could easily be recycled for the Gothic 2 Remake. And before you say that this would be a lazy approach for making a sequel, that's exactly what Piranha Bytes did with Gothic 1 and 2 back in the day. Not only Piranha Bytes, but most studios will be quick to capitalize on a successful game with a quick sequel after only a year or two. I highly doubt it's going to take a year or two, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if we get to see Gothic 2 Remake in about 3 years from now.
He's plastered.
If this remake gets a green light and they start working on it right now. I mean, just think about it, you have so many things you can reuse and maybe just modify them a little bit for the sequel. The majority of gameplay systems are the same, you already have a ton of recyclable assets that we talked about, and so on, you get the picture. They would still have a lot of work to do, there's no doubt about that. But like I said before, it's going to be a lot easier than starting from the scratch, like they did with Gothic 1 Remake. Not to mention that THQ will probably try to save as much money as they can, so reusing most assets is the only logical thing to do. And as long as the game turns out to be good, nobody will care about this. Anyway, tell me your opinion about the potential Gothic 2 Remake in the comments below. Do you think it's happening or not? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this. And if you want to go a step further, consider supporting your boy by becoming a YouTube channel member or a Patreon. Huge thanks to all my current supporters, and I'll see ya in the next one.